My name's Jonathan Shopley. I'm Managing Director at Natural Capital Partners, responsible for external affairs. It wasn't overly surprising. There are still substantial risks associated with a 2 degrees rise in temperature. And what the report said is, we really ought to be targeting a 1.5 degree rise. And the best way to deliver that is a net zero global economy by 2050. So if anything, it really focused down on what we'd spent our 7 Talanoas talking about, net zero, and how does the private sector deliver on that. And now it feels as if that net zero target is the one simplest thing that the Paris Agreement is delivering to global society and business. We need to target zero, and we've got a date to do that. And we've got all the tools that we need to deliver on that, and now we need to put our plans together. The 3 things that really surprised me, impressed me from the Talanoa process and the conversations we had, first of all, was the fact that private sector is really engaged. It is committing innovation, finance and ambition to the process and using net zero very effectively as a focus for that action. The second was a model that evolved from those conversations, which we call the Imprint Model, 7 prints that we need to address if we're going to make progress, not just to net zero, but beyond net zero, where risks are no longer risks, but more opportunities for business. And the third was the fact that out of those conversations, businesses had 10 very simple recommendations to the UNFCCC that will help encourage private sector involvement in our journey to net zero. As we started to talk about companies' relationship with their greenhouse gas emissions and how do you get to net zero, we focused on 2 kinds of prints. There's the carbon footprint, scopes 1, 2 and 3, which we broke out into tail print, everything upstream in your supply chain, your footprint, your direct operations, and your handprint, the way in which your products and services either deliver carbon intensity or an opportunity to reduce carbon to your customers. The second group of prints that we came across, or sort of evolved from those conversations, were what we call beyond net zero, because they're about ways in which companies think and act around net zero that really delivers long-term value. So they included brain print. How do you take your carbon emission strategy, your net zero strategy, and make that central to your corporate strategy? The next was fingerprint. So many people spoke about the fact that the way in which they really make progress is when every individual across an organization's supply chain understands what their role in delivering climate mitigation is and how they can be effective in that role. So that sort of personal fingerprint was the next print that we spent some time on. And then we recognized too from those conversations that many corporations have made commitments or pledges, and what turns those commitments and pledges into real action is a blueprint. So that was our penultimate print. And then finally, people spoke about the way in which we communicate around climate. Is it all about risk? Is it all about opportunity? Is it about governments? Is it about businesses? And so we spoke about newsprint being the final print, and that is everything to do with how we communicate our actions on climate change in a positive way that enables other people to take action and sees this as an opportunity for a better world, not a risk that we are failing to address. Those 10 recommendations that we distilled from our conversations with those 61 companies fall into 3 categories. 1, how do we finance this massive transition? 2, how do we raise ambition around the goal of net zero? And 3, how do we account for all of our actions in a way that makes us secure around our ability to stabilize climate. One of the striking things that came out of our conversations is that people inside companies that are taking action, setting net zero as a target, don't see it as much as a target as an inflection point beyond which they will be able to operate, to grow, and to generate wealth in the community, for the communities that they serve, because we will have gone through the eye of the needle of net zero into a position where we've de-risked climate change with a wealth of technologies and services that are now no or low emissions. I think what's going to be very interesting is translating that leadership, those mechanisms to target and deliver on net zero, and extend that reach beyond the climate leaders into what we call the smart followers, companies that know and understand the risks, want to take action, and want to do it in ways that are proven to be effective. And so I think the next steps for us are really translating much of what we've learned about companies pioneering paths into net zero and making that available for all companies up and down supply chains around the world.